Hello, everyone. This is Lala, and today I'm here to recap and discuss the 13th season of the challenge, which is called the challenge The Duel. So, the main importance of this season is that it is the first individual season where there are no teams and there really aren't any duels outside for a specific challenge, which is very impressive. So everyone really had to hold on to their own. We weren't getting many winners. We weren't getting most of the cast making it to the finals. I think this is the cast that had the smallest amount of finalists with 4 people per gender. So they really wanted everyone to show what they got individually. And due to this, we had a smaller cast here, which is definitely something that I think we needed after the last 2 seasons having very large casts. So I'm glad we had that. So Era 2 was definitely starting to take over at this point, though we still had a decent amount of Era 1 people who were still in their prime, but others who were starting to depart at around this point in the challenge history and in early Era 2 as well. So we had a lot of people making their final appearances at around this time too. I really did like the location. The format of the duel is pretty simple, where the winner of the challenge essentially had, or they started a chain of safety where one person, depending on the gender, would be the one who wasn't in the chain of safety, and that person called someone out to face an elimination. So I like that format, and I kept it pretty interesting. This season had a lot of drama in it. I wouldn't say as much as the Infernos, but definitely more than a lot of the other seasons up to this point. A lot of it was gameplay, though there were some that were personal, and I definitely do think the season has aged pretty well compared to the seasons around it, especially since individual seasons are a lot more commonplace now, and it's really just a joy to watch, and almost everyone held their own, which is something that you can rarely say about town seasons in general. Overall, it is a joy to watch, and it might be my favorite season up to this point, but we will see. So, the season is taking place in Brazil, where Casey tells us that she got a boob job from her third place winnings from last season. Robin officially broke up with Mark. Wes is still with Johanna. DM is in remission, and I'm sure there's other stuff that I am missing pertaining the updates. Everyone is wondering what the format/twist of the season will be, and TJ announces that this season is an individual season, meaning that there are no teams whatsoever, and this is a first for the challenge history since there's always large teams. And even last season, it was just duos, but nothing completely individual. There are male and female duo days, where the best person from the specific gender will choose someone to start the chain of safety, where the final person from that gender will not only be nominated, but they have to choose who to go against. So you publicly call people out. TG also mentions that there will be 4 people in the finals. Tyler and Paula are talking, and he thinks that him being gay will give him an advantage since he can bond with both genders, and notices that a lot of guys are bonding with the girls. The veterans are already plotting on which real world Key West person is going to go, and they decide that John is going to go first, where Derek mentions that it is the rookie treatment, and that's true. It wasn't that prevalent in the prior 2 seasons because half of the gauntlet was full of rookies, and that included people who were on their second season, and with fresh meat, over half of the cast were newbies. But you could say maybe the Austin cast were given the rookie treatment since both pairs had, or both people in those duos were rookies. So here we went back to the normal programming. So, Reach Out is the first challenge where everyone from each gender will be harnessed to a rope that is attached to a circle, and whomever grabs their key on the other side will win. Instead of choosing one side for the woman, Beth stays on her side, and most of the women decide to go to Beth to get their key, which Robin does end up getting. For the guys, Eric does get the key. This challenge was a pretty fun and enjoyable one, seeing how everyone worked it as well, and even working Beth, since she was being selfish with her maneuvers. Eric chooses the picks, where it shows Fresh Meat and Key West are at the bottom, so it's interesting where those 2 seasons were socially or politically at this point in time. He was his last, and the guy not picked is Tyler, but it doesn't matter since Tyler decides to pick John to go against in the duel. A lot of the cast thought it was dumb, since you wouldn't have thought that an ally would choose an ally, but neither of them are lasting in this game or in the season anyway, so it really doesn't matter. The elimination is called I Can, where they have to bet on how many watermelons they want to lift and hold for 5 seconds. And honestly, this elimination really isn't that exciting. It's not exciting at all. And I think this is the only season where it's in, and I definitely get and understand that choice. Tyler decides to hold 31 watermelons for 5 seconds in some sort of cage or whatever, and he does end up beating John. There really isn't much to say about John in the season. He was very mellow, calm, doesn't have the accent that he's known for having, and if I didn't know him from future seasons or just looking at anything challenge related, I am shocked that he came back after this season. Tina and Beth talk about how much they do not want any drama in the season, though many people in the house still do not like Beth, which Paula is worried about since they apparently room together. And a newbie hanging out with someone who's unpopular really is just poor strategy, essentially. DM talks to Svetlana about how she's been in remission for 6 months and only 3 people saw her without a wig on in her entire life, though she knows that she has to take it off at some point in the season. The challenge is called Ring Toss, where they have to grab rings that represent their color and place it on the pole of the same color and target your opponents. We've seen many challenges like this since this season, and it's a really fun, classic challenge, though there are many variations of it. Kenny wins part 1, and right before the challenge, all the women decide to swim, or to wear swim caps, my bad, to support DM, who does end up taking off her wig, and it's a really strong, somber, and heartwarming moment. DM does end up winning for the woman, and we see the start of CT and DM start to form here. Beth and Tina are arguing with one another about who knows what, pertaining how it started, and Tina tells Beth to not fuck with her, so Beth walks into her for hitting or pointing at her or whatever. Tina tells her to walk away before she punches her. Beth dares Tina to punch her to get kicked out, where Tina doesn't give a fuck about getting expelled, but she wanted to taunt, so she punches Beth, but it's a very weak punch, and I don't even know if it really hits Beth instead of her sunglasses, so yeah. Tina is bragging about how everyone was so glad someone did it, and like she really did something huge here, and Tina is DQ'd from the season. It was really dumb for Tina to do this, since she would have done very well in the season otherwise. She could have become the bona fide sole female face of the era, and had many more successful seasons had she just continued on this trajectory that was set up from her last 2 seasons. She literally didn't come back for another 14 to 15 years in the 2020s, though her return was on All Stars, and her only return to the flagship was season 40, which is happening as I'm recording this. Overall, it's definitely my least favorite season of hers so far. Since there's no elimination, since Tina took herself out, it is clear that the rookie guys, Nehemiah and Tyler, are worried. They immediately move on to the next challenge, which is called Pass with Care, where they have to partner with someone and they have to walk over a wooden bridge above the water, and both have to make it across. People walk at first, but then they crawl, and it's a solid enough challenge. Evan and Jody win the challenge, and unshockingly to no one, Tyler ends up being at the bottom of the chain, and he decides to pick Derek to face in the duel, since he wants to go against the top dog. The elimination is Ascender, where they have to climb a rope and then complete a puzzle. Derek, to the surprise of no one, beats Tyler. Anissa releases that she has no one else, so she is talking to Beth, despite disliking her, based off their history in the Gauntlet 2. Beth is warning about the Tina situation, where Derek decides to randomly insert himself into the conversation, calls Beth a piece of shit, and lashes out at her. And I guess this is a continuance from the Gauntlet 2, and there's quite a bit of that in the season, regarding storyline carryover. Tyler is definitely a bit more ballsy and has more personality than a lot of the other gay men that they cast, especially at around this point in time in the challenge history. And I did enjoy him from the short time he was on the season, though his career, with the exception of 2 seasons, has been pretty poor overall. Everyone, including Paula, knows that Paula is pretty much going in no matter what, and Anissa is whining about having no one and not wanting to kiss any ass, and we have Evan making a confessional about the woman being dumb, which is only a small start of the misogyny that he will be known for on the show. Roller derby is the challenge, and they have to go 10 laps, and I'm sure they did this in a few of the past seasons. It's a pretty fun but standard challenge nonetheless, where Brad wins for the men, and there's some clear tension between Anissa and Paula due to the former slamming the ladder in the challenge. Jodie wins it for the woman, and to the shock of no one, Paula is at the bottom of the chain, and she chooses Anissa due to the slam, and they would face one another several times against one another throughout several seasons. Anissa is salty that Paula chose her, and thought that Paula gave some BS reason, so the two women go at it after the challenge, and Paula thinks Anissa is fake for trying to be nice to her after Tina left. The elimination is called pole wrestle, and this is a staple challenge elimination, where you have to get the pole from the other person without letting go of the pole yourself, and Anissa does clearly win this over Paula. Paula was decent enough on the season, and she of course had her drama with Anissa, but she was definitely the recipient of the rookie treatment. She was likable enough, so I do see why she comes back, despite her short performance on this season, and it'll be interesting to see where she goes, or to be reminded of where she goes from here. The guys are all joking around, and we do see Nehemiah and Beth getting close, and they want to protect one another. Beth thinks Nehemiah is attractive, and they're joking around with one another, where some see it as a potential romance, to the point where everyone is joking around about it in front of them, which will become important in the future. Pushover is the challenge where they have to pick an opponent and push someone off a hanging platform, which is just a relatively mad challenge in my opinion. Beth went for the woman, and she snaps after seeing Kina, Jody, Robin, and Diem plotting against her, and Derek went for the men. Nehemiah is going into exile, and I think he's the only other rookie man at this point, so it makes sense, and he decides to choose Kenny as his opponent. Beth continues to pick an argument about Jody and acting like alliances are so awful, and Jody, of course, reports all this back to the other women. Ascender is the elimination, and Nehemiah easily beats Kenny. There's more commentary about Beth and Nehemiah, with a bunch of ageism shown within these comments, and it's even worse because many of the same people have done All Stars or regular seasons at Beth's age at this season, or the age she was at here, and we do see Beth and Anissa making up to align with one another compared to their feud in the Gauntlet 2, and they're teaming up with Wes and Nehemiah, the two who are on the same real world season together, and are apparently best friends, even in real life. This was a very quiet season for Kenny, and it's the only season where he was eliminated before the finals. I really don't have much to say about him, but he didn't piss me off, which is a plus, I guess. I'm guessing that they saw something in him to bring him back, despite having a relative dead season here, and it being his second season. Women decide to wear wigs to the club so DM can feel more uncomfortable, and there's a lot of flirting / fun times with CT and DM taking place at the moment. Beth is plotting with Anissa and Svetlana about how to take down the Kina, Jody, DM, and Robin alliance. And we have Kina ranting about Beth being so awful to a group of people. And it's just the usual anti-Beth content that a lot of people have. Flying Leap is the challenge where they have to leap between two platforms, and it's pretty self-explanatory. CT and Svetlana win for their genders, and the plan for the new alliance talked about it does end up taking place here, with Casey, who didn't even do the challenge, ending up going into the duel, and she chooses Robin to go against. And it doesn't really seem like Casey's in either alliance, really. Anissa and Beth are giving Casey advice, and Brad is giving Robin advice before the elimination, and it is a pole wrestle, where Casey has absolutely no chance. There's more CT and DM flirting that we see at the end of the episode, and he thinks that a part of him is being used by her. So this is a quieter season for Casey, especially compared to her performance in the last season, but she was still likable enough. At the same time, you're not going to remember much of anything about her regarding the season, and she really didn't have much to do in the season, kind of like Kenny. So it is a men's gauntlet, and Wes ends up plotting with Evan about how they will, actually no, sorry, that's for later in the season. Anyways, Evan is talking about how he might be in trouble, and Wes is kind of planting that in his head. And we move on to Beth and Nehemiah's usual antics. The challenge is called throwback, where they have to jump off a swing in the air to swim to get a ball to put it in a circle. I didn't really care much for the challenge, but I can't really say that it's bad, if that makes enough sense. Evan and Kina end up winning the challenge, and Eric is not saved, and he chooses to go against Nehemiah in the elimination. I Can is the elimination, and instead of watermelons, it is logs that they have to hold for 5 seconds. Eric lifts 165 logs for 5 seconds, and he does end up beating Nehemiah here. But I don't like this elimination because the other opponent doesn't do anything, so it kind of takes the purpose out of it. Of course, Beth and Wes are not happy with the elimination results, and Beth knows that she's probably going to be the next woman going home, and yeah. Nehemiah had a solid enough rookie season. He won an elimination, had a memorable flipman/romance with Beth, that will cause some drama on their next season together, so I see why he came back. He didn't get hazed as much as the other rookies, and made it roughly around halfway, which was his best case scenario in the season. Beth makes some comments about how she heard Brad mention that Robin was coming after her, and Brad somehow ends up snapping at Svetlana during this exchange and argument because she somehow got into it or inserted herself into it. So the two of them, meaning Brad and Svetlana, start arguing, and then he blames Beth for causing Svetlana to be riled up. Honestly, to me, it's clear that Brad drank a bit too much before this situation, and you can tell by the intonation in his voice, and he ends up saying that this situation is textbook Beth. Svetlana ends up crying on the phone to someone before we move on to the next challenge, which is Rafty Race. They have to put on their slippers, like the slim slippers, to run to pump their rafts and then grab some oars, which was an okay enough challenge. Yeah. The Jody ends up barely beating Beth in the challenge, and it would have been so interesting if Beth saved herself here, but that's besides the point. Svetlana is put into the duel since Robin did not want Beth to be at the end, since she knows Beth would have chosen her as an opponent. So Svetlana ends up choosing Beth to go into the duel, and she rants about how much she does not like Beth and kind of blames Beth for the situation with Brad. Push Me is the elimination, and everyone thinks that it will be in Beth's favor, but as the fans know, the flag was so easily rippable, and it's really not a good elimination. Because Beth's flag ripped, she's immediately DQ'd. So there's a situation with this elimination. There are some who said that the rule of the ripping was actually a voiceover done well after the elimination, since you never actually see TJ say it to the others, and when that happens, it's almost always a voiceover. And apparently, after the elimination happened, they stopped for a while, meaning the producers, and they decided on the spot as to whether it should be a DQ or not. But allegedly, they decided that it was a DQ since they really wanted Svetlana to stay because they thought she would be a face of the show. They wanted her back. I guess her real season was right before this, while Beth was unpopular with the viewers and the cast. So they decided to get rid of Beth here and keep Svetlana. And apparently, just looking at everyone's reactions, they thought Svetlana lost. So there's a lot of controversy here. And the situation ended up backfiring since Svetlana never came back after this. Beth would come back, and Beth proved that she was more worthy than Svetlana. So I think they made a poor choice here. Beth was still enjoyable and messy this season and continued her momentum from her last season. She actually didn't quit any challenge or elimination this season like she did in the last 2 seasons, so that's impressive too, and it showed to me that she was really in it to win it and to play her best here. It sucks that she has one more flagship season after this, and her most memorable moments already happened chronologically. Wes is not thrilled, since 2 of his allies just went home consecutively, and he is talking to Yam about wanting to marry Johanna. Jody and Derek are talking about how this is his 5th season, and he finally wants to win a season. And I guess that's been a theme within his last 3 seasons, and it is also DM's birthday. But he wants to do something special for her. I think this might be CT, actually. Yeah, I believe CT is the one who stated that last part about DM's birthday. Anyways, the challenge is called Pole Dance, where they have to split into 2 teams, and one of them have to climb a pole to get a flag, where DM wins it for CT, who is the team captain. The second part of the challenge involves running, then sliding down a hill, and then climbing up a hill, which Evan wins for the guys and DM wins for the girls. Wes volunteers to go into the duel since he knew that he was going to get voted in or left out of the inner circle anyways, thus being sent into elimination. And he chooses Derek to go against him. The two play pole wrestling, and it's one of the toughest pole wrestles in challenge history. And I think this might be actually no, it's the first male pole wrestle, I believe. Several rounds take place between the two of them, and TJ has to break them up several times, but West finally pulls out the win over Derek, which makes Keena sad, though we all know Derek would eventually be known as being the king of the pole wrestle, so I guess he learned a lot from this one in his future pole wrestles. West calls Johanna about how hard the elimination, how he wants to marry her, and how he thinks he injured himself in the elimination. And he just bawls his eyes out to her and is talking in a moopy voice, which is honestly just kind of makes me sick. Honestly, it's just the same old Derek, at least with this older version of Derek, where he's kind of douchey but doesn't really offer too much to the table. But he's still a challenge beast, and he had that fight with Beth at some point in the season. In general, I don't have a whole lot to say about Derek, but it's clear that he really isn't the main character that he was being set up to be a few seasons prior. Though, like I mentioned earlier, there's a consistent theme of him just getting just short of that win or that final. So the next episode starts with everyone out at the club and Robin is getting wasted. They go back home and Robin is somehow confused by Anissa since she is black, white, Puerto Rican, ignoring the fact that Puerto Rican isn't a race, Jewish, ignoring the fact that that's a religion and not a race, gay, and straight, where Anissa calls her a disgrace and tells her off while Robin is literally yawning the entire time. And it's clear that Robin doesn't get the concept of bisexuality or biraciality either. The entire house is really shocked, and Anissa is proud of everything she identifies with and as on a racial and sexuality point of view. And it's an issue with biracial people and bisexual people in general. And sadly, this isn't the only time that this would happen to Anissa on the challenge. Brad is going on and on about how he doesn't associate with that, despite Robin being one of his friends, and she crossed a line, and we will get into that a bit later. And it's the next morning, and Anissa tries to talk to Robin, and she does not, and by she I mean Robin, does not care to speak about it, or hear about how, and she will never walk in Anissa's shoes. The two of them end up arguing once again about the situation, since this was apparently the fourth time Robin said something about Anissa's sexuality. So I'm guessing the sexuality was the bigger issue than the racial stuff, and honestly, Robin just comes off as very ignorant and obtuse here, and intentionally so. Dine and Dash is the challenge where they are made to eat within a 20-minute period, and then they have to weigh one another. They then have to get 10 flags, but they have to go to the polls in order to get the most flags, which Evan ends up winning, since CT did not follow the rules. Despite all of Brad's talk and performativity, he chooses Robin, and Anissa ends up in the duel, and she ends up choosing Robin. It does make sense why Brad saved Robin, with them being from the same Road Rule season and knowing her and all, but the liberal performativity is just too much, and it shows why some liberal people are just as bad as the conservative Republicans that they end up complaining about when it comes to issues like this. That's all I'm going to say about the situation. The two women compete in Ascender, where Anissa ends up beating Robin. I will say that it was somewhat interesting to see Robin without having Mark around or dating him or him being mentioned, since he's been such a huge part of her journey this far, or at least at this point, but she really showed her ignorant ass on her final episode, and I don't remember her doing a whole lot beforehand, so she got a pretty under the radar edit otherwise. Not a good showing of her, but we will see what happens to her in other seasons. Eric and Brad are talking about struggling with who to choose in the lineup, or if they are in the duel, and I feel like this will be important in this episode, since the challenge is never settled with their editing. CT and DM are talking about when they're going to have their first kiss, and she tells him that she likes kisses on the cliff, but she doesn't want to plan their first kiss since it takes away the spontaneity or whatever. Evan and Wes are plotting about how to get CT into the duel, but they want Eric to do it since they don't want to do it themselves, and they feel like he's the best size-wise or whatever to go against CT. And they're just being chickens essentially. Stacking stairs is the challenge where it's pretty self-explanatory about stacking boxes that will have them high enough to grab a flag, and I didn't care much for the challenge. Anyways, Evan and Jody do win the challenge, and the plan goes as planned and is executed as planned, with Eric being able to choose, but he chooses Brad instead of CT. Because I guess they didn't take into consideration that Eric himself would also be someone who'd be scared to go against CT. So the two end up competing in pole wrestle, and Eric is trying to use his weight to his advantage, where he will put it all under. Essentially, he will put the pole under him and just plop his weight onto Brad. But Brad does pull out the win, which he is very happy about. Despite the plan failing, a lot of the guys are glad that Eric is gone, since he's a tough person to beat in elimination. The episode ends with DM going on a jog, and the two, meaning her and he, are on a cliff, where they do kiss as she takes off her head wrap, where the entire cast can see it from their balcony. Eric was pretty decent in the season, and he did perform better here than last season, but I don't remember a whole lot of moments about him in the season. It's clear that he's cast to be the comedic big guy of the season, but he's generally pretty harmless here. Liam and CT are having a good time, especially after their first case, where they are plotting about how they need to get to the end, or how they're going to get to the end. Kina wants to take Svetlana out, and she is also plotting with Jody about making it to the end. Anissa and Svetlana are talking about how they made it far and that they have to fight together in order to make it to the end together, but Svetlana is very overwhelmed at this point. Kina and DM are also talking about how unbeatable Jody is, and she's never been in the duel this season. Icebreakers is the challenge where they have to break the amount of ice as quickly as possible for 5 minutes and also weigh the ice pieces. Evan and Jody wins for the perspective genders, with Svetlana going into the duel, where she and Nisa knew that they would be alternating duels from essentially the second half onwards, where she chooses Kita to go against in Push Me. For a while, neither of the women are moving, and it seems like Kina is moving forward, but her foot starts to cramp, and she does end up losing against Svetlana. Kina is crying over her foot as well as losing, though Svetlana is talking shit, despite her doing the exact damn same thing when she supposedly lost against Beth not that long ago at all, and honestly it just makes her very annoying to watch. I did enjoy Kina during the season, even though she was in the more unlikable alliance and didn't perform as strongly here as she did in the Gauntlet 2. I wish she did more seasons, but I do respect her for getting a career and changing her name to have more privacy and really moving on completely, where a lot of challengers struggle with that despite all the talk that they say about moving on and retiring. Wes and Evan are talking about how they set apart their differences despite their past issues, and they agree to work together this season. They are talking about how they need to get CT out, but neither one of them feel the strongest about taking him out themselves. But it is clear that Wes is setting Evan up. Though you can say that to a lesser extent, Evan is also trying to set Wes up. Sunken Treasure is the challenge where they're competing in pairs to swim in the bottom of the pool to see puzzles, and it's a really dangerous challenge due to all the pressure in the ocean, and they have to go. Technically, it's not the ocean, but in the body of water. But they have to go to the very bottom to unlock the cage, and most people really struggle with this. Wes and Svetlana win the challenge for this specific gender, and Evan is at the bottom of the chain, where he does choose CT to go into elimination, since he feels better against CT in an elimination instead of the final. Evan gets nervous when CT stands up right beside him, and CT starts to somewhat taunt him, and Evan immediately realizes that he made a mistake, and DM is also very pissed off at the decision, since she expected someone, or better from someone who was a friend of hers. Evan realizes that he was played, and then he gets really mad at Wes to the point where they get into an argument where he accuses Wes of setting him up, though Wes mentions that he agreed to the deal and has only acted like this because he is scared. Honestly, I found this all to be very entertaining. TJ and TT immediately sees the cheat sheet Evan wrote on his arm when they go into the elimination, which is honestly just so pathetic in my opinion. So he has to erase it. And of course, CT wins the elimination against Evan. You can see some of the douchiness that Evan will be known for in the future, but he's still a relatively affable and likable enough person on the season. Of course, he did well on the challenges, and he might have won the most duels out of all the men this season, if I'm remembering correctly. And seeing him fumble the bag with trying to pick at CT was pretty fun, but I realized that the future of JFK members are always better apart than together. CT is helping DM train for the elimination since it is a woman's duel, and it's clear that she's a very insecure woman about her abilities regarding eliminations. Anissa and Wes talk about how herself and Svetlana are the only women who win in all but two of the duels in the season, and she is worried about what Jodie would do if she was in an elimination, or who she would choose. Around the block is the challenge where they have to climb up some large square thing in the air and get the flag at the very top of it. And it's definitely a challenge I don't care a whole lot for, and it isn't very interesting to watch. Jodie and TT end up winning the challenge for their specific gender, and I end up with Anissa in the duel, and she chooses to face DM, despite telling DM during the challenge that she would not choose her, though Anissa only said that because she thought DM would win the challenge. So Anissa's being very two-faced here. And you tend to notice this quite a bit with Anissa throughout the seasons, but it's pretty apparent with this situation and even in the plot situation as well. The two of them then get into an argument, and DM is pissed off that Anissa changed her mind. Do that! Though, you can. You can always change your mind. Anissa definitely made a shady ass move, and while I get why DM is upset, it does come off like entitlement. Like, how dare you do this to me, of all people? Svetlana has to tell Anissa to get over feeling sad about the situation and for putting DM in elimination, and CT is trying to cheer DM up. The two play in the I Can elimination where DM has to lift 150 coffee bags, I believe, and she is not able to do it. Anissa feels shitty about the situation and tries to make up with DM, but she's not feeling it. Of course, we have DM showmance with CT, which is the most notable showmance from the challenge history. I definitely saw more of her entitlement in the season, but she definitely came off as more likable still, and she wasn't solely defined by her cancer, despite having some really heartbreaking and heartwarming situations regarding it. CT and Jodie decide to work together since they're the strongest within their genders left. Paddle Me is the last challenge before the final, and it's essentially a surfing slash paddling challenge where they have to do that until they reach the finish line. But whomever does not win will automatically go into the duel no matter what, where a guy and a girl is going home this round since there's three each. And with one person winning, the other two automatically go into elimination. Jody, yet again, and Wes win the challenge, and they are automatically in the finals. So CT has to face Wes. Sorry, CT has to face Brad, I believe, in Push Me. Yeah, CT and Brad face in Push Me, which CT chose that elimination, and Svetlana has to face Anissa in I Can, which Svetlana chooses, since the former knows that she has the better chance in it, since Anissa is more physical than her. The same thing that happened with Beth and Push Me ends up happening to CT as well, with the ripping of the flag being way too easy. CT refuses to face his loss and starts losing it completely, picking an argument with TJ and Brad, storming around the duel like a toddler having a huge tantrum. Wes, for some reason, decides to get involved, calls him out for fake dating DM. CT threatens to choke the shit out of him. I'll choke the shit out of you, yo. And it's a very entertaining banter back and forth between the two of them. But CT does decide to leave before he snaps really hard. He's like, DJ, get me out of here, yo. Now we move on to the women's elimination, where Anissa has to lift 73 logs for 5 seconds, but she's not able to do it, so she is eliminated here. And Svetlana realized that this one was more of chance, which is why she chose this one compared to the other ones, where Anissa would have demolished her. I feel like both CT and Anissa had their breakthrough seasons here, despite them doing a few seasons beforehand, but they're mainly in the background for those seasons. Of course, CT had his relationship showmance with DM, which got a lot of screen time here, and he came off as less douchey despite getting to his fair share of drama and performing well in the missions. Anissa had her race and sexuality questioned, and she handled it well, while having a nice underdog run and winning some eliminations along the way, where this would be the start of her elimination queen reputation. Final Four is talking about what they would do with the money if they win and why they want to win. And I'm not going to get into all of that since it's really just redundant. The final is called the Rio Deal, where they have to first shoot a soccer ball in a net, and then they have to run to complete some Brazilian blocks or whatever, where they carry and place them in a certain pattern. Then they have to balance on a teeter-totter for like 5 seconds. Anyway, the final is better than the last few seasons, so will give it to that, but I don't know if it's one of the better finals overall. Wes and Jody win the final, hence them winning the season. Brad definitely came off as hypocritical throughout a lot of the season, with the Anissa situation and some of the drama that he got himself into, especially with the Anissa and Svetlana and a few other situations as well. But it is one of his more memorable seasons as a character and a challenge competitor, especially so far in his career. Svetlana was someone who really annoyed me throughout the season with her entitlement, and while she was an underdog, her accomplishments aren't a whole lot once you dig into it. And I can't say she's boring though. But in general, I'm more than fine with her being a one and done. Though apparently she has some like serious issues in her real life, so hopefully she gets it together and she's able to recover. Wes definitely came off as a lot more likable in this season, despite him still being the same strategist and egotist that he was on, or that he was last season. I don't know if it's due to him getting rid of his mohawk or him not having his girlfriend there, or it being an individual game, but I found him to be a lot more entertaining and tolerable here while getting into drama. Though this would be his last season for the next several seasons, but we'll get it there very late on into Era 2. Jodie was definitely boring on the season, and apparently production had no interest in her after this, but she apparently told them to never call her again after winning the season, and they didn't until All Stars. She dominated the season and came in with the intention of solely focusing on winning and nothing else, but she didn't have many character or personality moments overall in the season. So I did watch the reunion when I first watched this about a year ago, but I can't find the reunion again. So I'm kind of just gonna go off my memory. I just remember Svetlana picking at bed and her showing her ass there, and of course CT and DM were dating happily and whatever else. There really isn't a whole lot to say there. But overall, yeah, I really enjoyed the season. There's definitely a lot of drama. Some of it was personal, a lot of it actually involved the gameplay. I really liked the format of the individual player seasons, and this being an individual format where only one person per gender wins, one person per gender goes home, and you really have to rely on yourself. And it's something that they definitely do a lot more in eras 3 and 4, though it's not as consistent as in era 2, though obviously we have the dual sequel. But overall, it's very fun. You didn't have half of the cast or over half of the cast making it to the final just due to the team's format. A lot of characters or challenges grew into their own from a character and a competitive point of view. A lot of the era 2 people started coming into their own, and even some of the late era 1 people who are background characters there started becoming main focuses like Anissa and CT. And it's a smaller cast where I really think that smaller casts are better than larger casts because you get to focus on all of them. The rookies have a bit more room to breathe. And there aren't as many of them, so it doesn't incentivize all of the veterans to work together the entire season. The challenges weren't the best in this season, as I found a lot of them to be a bit too dangerous, and something that I don't even know if they would do now, but I never really watched the show for the challenges as the main priority. Era 2 is definitely starting to become good at this point, and it'll be interesting to see how it continues, especially with more and more of the Era 1 people actually retiring or taking long hiatuses. So this is either number 1 so far, or it's somewhere in between or right below the two Inferno seasons. So far it's the Duel and the two Inferno seasons at the very top out of the 13 seasons that I reviewed slash recap so far. Anyways, I'm going to continue with the challenge reviews. I'm going to do some more Big Brother content on both channels, so look out for that. And I'll be back with more stuff too. You can like, subscribe to both channels, and I'll be back soon. And there's more additional information in the description bar. Alright, so take care.